Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm James from Hamilton Effects, and in today's video we are going to be checking out some gain staging. Now this is a super integral, important part of music technology, from the micro, so inside pedal circuitry, to the macro, so pedalboard design, putting pedals on a board in what order, what amp you're going to choose, what pickups are in your guitar, and yeah, we're going to explore that a little bit. We're going to use the Twin Boost, which is like a gain stage pedal, if you like. I feel like the name Boost sounds quite utilitarian and practical, but it's a gain staging pedal. So yeah, I'm just about to put together a pedal board using my AJB pedal board. My board from AJB, the latest one that I've got, is kind of two tiers, and the top tier you can take off, so I'm going to use that. It's slightly smaller. I've been using it as a bass board over the weekend, so I'm kind of tearing that apart and about to use it to make this video. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, get involved in the conversation in the comments, or if there's not one yet, why not start one off? And yeah, enjoy the video. Okay, so this is the pedal board setup that I've got for testing, experimenting, explaining gain staging. HX Stomp doing the amps as usual. I've gone for a super reverb model. I wanted something with high headroom because I didn't want to be, having distortion from the amp really, and it was that or going DI, but just to kind of make it sound a bit nice, I've got the super reverb, I've got some reverb itself on there. Super dynamic, so much variation in volume. That's the scope of the dynamic of the amp, from like massive, right? I've got the Rat, which obviously has distortion in it. I've got my modded ODR1, which has overdrive in it. And I've got the Twin Boost, which is where we're going to start. Now, the Twin Boost is two independent volume boosts. So the right-hand side has a gain control and a volume knob. And with the gain down, it is a clean boost. Volume up at halfway. Volume all the way up. So I've got the gain set all the way down and the volume set all the way up now, and all that it's doing really is expanding the dynamic range, right? So before, the super reverb with the volume on my guitar next to nothing was there, and as we kind of brought it up, we got to there. Now, by adding in this first boost to effectively nothing, right? There's nothing that's going to distort there. We can go from this quiet volume and in fact we are clipping the super reverb a little bit there. Out of interest, let's just turn off that amp model. So this is probably going to sound horrible, but here's the volume kind of ride without that amp model in there. Right, volume. So that is what one side of the Twin Boost is doing. So when we talk about gain staging, you know, you might want that because your rhythm sound is a nice kind of clean. And then you've got a little solo coming up. And you just need more volume, more of the same sound. Your amp is a clean kind of high headroom thing. That's just going to lift it. On the left side of the twin boost, we have a bias control, which when it's all the way up is going to give you a similarly pretty clean boost. Same deal, right? Again, we're getting some clipping there. If I turn off the amp model. There you go, you get the idea, right? So each side of the twin boost has a slightly different character on a boost. You know, if you run it clean. The left side and the right side. Now the interesting thing comes in with gain staging is when you have more than one gain stage, right? You're kind of aligning them up. If you're just going guitar into amp, your gain stage is the preamp. Well, even then you've got the preamp, you've got the power amp, you've got the speaker, and you've got the guitar. All different areas where you're kind of having a volume that's coming in and then something that has limits. And when you're hitting those limits, you're either going to compress, which means you're hitting the limits and it's just being squished, or it's going to distort, where the wave, instead of being a nice and smooth wave, not that electric guitar waves are particularly smooth, but they're going to clip and kind of when it reaches the limit, it will become a flat line like that. And we can recreate this using the twin boost. This has a direction toggle, which decides which boost is first going into which one, which is second. And the boost stage is creating another kind of limit. So at the moment we're going guitar into amp, which the limits are up here. We're not really hitting the limits unless we ride it at crazy volume. But by adding in the second side of the twin boost, those limits are smaller, right? Because of the settings, because the makeup of the circuit itself, we can distort going into the boost settings. So just to remind you here, we've got, so I'm going to set them both gain all the way down, bias at normal, volume at 10 o'clock. So we've got a reasonable volume boost here. Okay, the left side, as I said, squishes a little bit, but that's because the character is different. So I'm going to put that one first. And then when I turn on the second boost, we're getting some crunch, we're getting some distortion, right? It's pretty harsh into a super reverb. I'm going to try and tame those top end bits a little bit. Now that clipping is happening inside the twin boost. We're not driving into the amp. And that is where the first boost, in this case the blue one, the left one, is slamming the input of the second one. The second one is as high a headroom as possible because the gain is down low, but it's still causing a clip. So then our volume control of the boost, which is first in the chain, becomes like an input gain. So the more we turn that up, the more distortion we're going to get from the second boost stage. It's super quick. You know, you can really hear those transients. It's brittle in some ways. I don't think it's brittle in a thin way, but yeah, that kind of gain makeup, it's not like an overdrive pedal, it's not like a distortion pedal. It feels super kind of dynamic and responsive. So there you go, that's what's going on there. So then, yeah, we've got our first boost, our first volume control, which is controlling the gain. And then our second one, which remains a volume control. So if we turn that down, we've still got that same kind of crunch character. But at less volumes. And if we push that up, it's going to push the amp. Being a super reverb, it's not really doing much. Now, if we flip the direction, it's going to change slightly because we're going clean boost with the gain set all the way down into one that, as I said, its kind of inherent character is a bit more crunchy. I don't know whether you can hear that super clearly, but it's got a bit of kind of give, a little bit of compression under the fingers. So boosting into that. Balancing the fourth, pushing into the input with the output volume on the second one. Now, distortion creates all sorts of these harmonics. I'm really pushing it to the extreme, but when you use the twin boost in its subtleties, you get some really nice kind of additional harmonic content. So there you go, as well as kind of getting all of that kind of range of one transistor boosting into another one, which, by the way, is how fuzz face works pretty much. You're getting kind of all of the warmth, saturation, feel that comes from that as well. Now, we've been totally ignoring these two knobs on the twin boost. I'll just quickly run through what they sound like. So again, here's our clean. Here's clean but with the boost, and then we're bringing in some gain. And what we're effectively doing there is limiting the range that the transistor is going to be clean for, right? So gain is pretty much all the way up. If I have a little bit on my volume control, it's still clean, right? So we're gain staging between my guitar and then this kind of single stage drive. And even with this single coil pickup in my telly, it's driving into that kind of boost stage. I was going to put a bit of treble back into the amp, but I think I'll leave it for now. Don't mind that kind of sound. The left side has a bias control, which is unusual for a clean boost. But I really like the variety of character that you get from that bias control. So it's, again, limiting the top and the bottom, but in a different way. It's a real feel thing. I just really like that kind of... You know, it's still a clean sound. It feels like you're playing a clean sound, but as if you've got a compressor on and then you've got all this texture too. I don't know, to me it's the distortion of a clean sound. And then, like, you know, just the combination of the two, you could get lots of different sounds. So the twin boost, you know, I feel like people maybe are put off from the word boost because it sounds like a utility thing, but it is a gain staging pedal. It is so kind of expressive, so, you know, it's got so much in there to play with, especially with the toggle switch and that kind of thing. The twin parallel runs those two boosts both at the same time. You kind of blend between each one. So yeah, that's what the twin parallel does. So as you might have guessed from the last few videos over the last month or so, I'm working on refining and updating my versions of the Embers and the twin boost, including changing up what's going on with the twin parallel and that kind of stuff. So I've got limited stock left of the twin boost, twin parallel and Embers for the next couple of months. So if you were thinking about getting one, now is the time to get it. I'm not going to be making any more of these as they are now. They're going to be quite different. And yeah, so if you're thinking of going for it, now's the time to grab yourself a twin parallel or a twin boost, or the Embers Fuzz, which isn't featured in this video. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Do click subscribe, as I've said, and get involved. All right, let's go. So let's move on to other areas of the pedal board. Let's do the modded Nobles ODR1. Now the mod that I've done changes the clipping diodes in there. So we know that clipping is inherent to the ODR1, but I'm going to start with the drive all the way down. So again, here's my clean sound into the super reverb. And here's what you can get with the volume up and the gain down. So it is possible to get cleans from the ODR1. I wonder if we boosted into that with a clean side of the twin boost, what it'd sound like. I think what's interesting and what's demonstrated there is the tonal characteristics of the second thing, or the last thing in the gain stage, is going to be the thing that's colouring it the most, right? The super reverb, it's not colouring it in terms of saturation, distortion, it is in terms of EQ, but the distortion characteristics are coming from the clipping that's happening going into the ODR1 here. And as we increase the drive, it's going to increase the clipping that's going on inside the pedal. And I'm going to balance this by turning the volume down and fiddling with the spectrum and the tone control. Sounds great, sounds really nice. So that is our overdrive pedal. It's not creating any clipping in the amp. That is what the overdrive pedal sounds like into a super reverb. Now gain staging comes into another thing if we're problem solving, right? So in my previous example, I used the clean side of the twin boost to demonstrate if you had a solo and you needed to get louder, right? But on our nobles, as we had it at the moment, we're distorting quite a lot. And so it's unlikely that we're going to get much louder, no matter how hard we push it with a volume that's before it. Yeah, I can't believe, like, even if I push the volume up to the max. There is no change in volume, right? I'm looking at the wave file on Logic there and it's exactly the same. So if we wanted to boost the volume, we would want to put it afterwards, right? Because then we can take the signal that's already been squashed and then just kind of lift it all and then feed it into the next stage, right? That's why if you have a low headroom amp, you know, something that's low wattage, you're going to get more drive if you boost into it. That's why it's really hard to demo the twin boost, because I can show you what it sounds like into my rig, which is this, usually modeling AC30 or something like that. But actually, if you're going to play it into a high watt, it is going to be really loud. If you're going to play it into, I don't know, something tiny, it's going to make it saturate and sound great. I guess it depends in some ways what you want it for. That's why in the twin parallel, I've got an attenuate switch where you could kind of run the drive on the twin, but then have it low enough so that you don't have to have your volume like next to nothing to get unity out of it, if you just kind of wanted it as a texture pedal rather than a boost itself. So yeah, if we're wanting to boost a drive, you know, so let's try it the other way around. So shall we? Let's get a clean boost sound back from the ODR1. So I think I have volume all the way up, gain all the way down, tone all the way up, and this is the sound that we've got. Let's get our rhythm sound from the twin Let's go for something like this. I'm always playing the same stuff. I'm sure you all suffer from that same thing. So we're not clipping it anymore at the ODR1 as in any further, but we're lifting the volume and imposing the EQ on there. But as with the two sides of the twin boost, the fun stuff comes when you're using the subtleties and blending them together, right? So let's get two sounds. So we've got our twin boost sound that we're using. What are we doing? And then let's find a nice ODR1 sound. So not too drivey. They're both roughly unity volume. I know there's like ups and downs and it's difficult to tell with compression and stuff in there, but we've got two nice sounds. Maybe this is your verse sound. And then this is your chorus sound. And then here's your big bridge sound stacked together. Time signature change. What I'm hearing there is underneath the ODR1 we've got the twin boost bringing its characterful kind of biasy sound. The ODR1 is bringing a bit of drive, it's bringing definite EQ, and it's being driven further with the twin boost. So you're kind of getting those two sounds melded together. Which is very cool. Let's change to D and look at the rap. Let's get everything at 12. This is just your standard rap. Let's just demonstrate again that no matter how hard we push it, it's not going to get louder. We're just getting more compression, more saturation, more drive, and therefore more noise, you know. So anything that's going before that is just going to really saturate that rat sound. Again, we could turn the distortion all the way down. Let's see how much of a clean sound the rat has. That is interesting. Volume all the way up, distortion all the way down, filter all the way off. It's like it's invisible. let's compare it, right? Let's boost into the Rat. Volume all the way up, gain all the way down, clean side of the twin boost. Going to turn that amp model off. Okay, so you can hear it there, right? With the amp model off, volume all the way up, the volume is loud. The level is loud out of the twin boost, right? We turned the Rat on, which to all intents and purposes was totally transparent with clean, but the circuitry inside the Rat is limiting, it's clipping the volume from the twin boost. And the reason why turning it off demonstrates that is because the twin boost is boosting so hard that it is even clipping a high headroom amp, right? It's because we've got the volume all the way up. So again, let's find like a fairly subtle setting with the Rat. This is where pedal boards become very varied, right? And then we've got our subtle setting with the ODR1. So I've set each pedal up to be a kind of sound that I would use, right? The Rat, it's not going full ratty Rat mode, the distortion's quite low, but it's still bringing what I want. So let's go. This is what the ODR1 is doing. So not quite compressing it as much, feels like there's more headroom, but the drive and the character is still there. This is how they stack. Which is kind of doing the job of what I would have with the Rat with the distortion higher, but I have the advantage of also this available to me. I've got the left side of the twin boost for the gnarly, weird. And then if we're going into the solo, so I feel like the only thing that I'm lacking there is a little bit of a volume boost actually, because, you know, what I'm using as a volume boost isn't adding any. So then I might think, okay, right, let's move the twin boost here, like, you know, have the ODR one first, then the twin boost. We kind of lose out on being able to push things into, you know, to add more drive to these, but then what we gain is a volume boost, which maybe is what we want. So that is where these kind of gain staging decisions come into, you know, pedalboard layout. They also happen in the minutiae of pedal design, right? Because in here you've got lots of different ways of kind of creating clipping, which include gain staging. It determines what amp you're going to use, right? So that was all with this kind of super reverb setting, but let's go to an AC30 setting, which is kind of my normal go-to. What I did have as a clean boost is still a definite volume boost. You know, the lift is definitely there, but looking at the waveform, it's way less dramatic. You know, they feel way more distorted into that because it's pushing into the preamp. Back to the super reverb. AC30. Let's turn off the AC30 and have it direct. So the AC30 is adding a lot, but then, you know, having an amp versus not having an amp is massively different. There's one last thing that I'd like to try, and that is with a different guitar. Because I've been using single coils this whole time. Humbuckers output a lot more. You know, in general they output a lot more signal. Back to the super reverb. Here's my bridge pickup. That same setting on the Nobles is so much more driven. This guitar has very old strings on. But yeah, like hopefully there I demonstrated just with my volume control when like that last little bit I had the Rat on, the ODR one on, and the right side of the twin boost. You know, just how gain staging can work. You know, it happens everywhere. It happens in the microcosm and the macrocosm. But it is definitely worth thinking about, you know, be it creatively to try and come up with new sounds, new textures. I find it super inspiring when you've got like a high gain sound, but then you're kind of taking stuff away. That kind of underdrive effect that happens when you use the volume control, or you know, like it's on the Embers, where it's kind of designed a fuzz sound to work good with low volume, thereby making it clean, right? I find those kind of sounds really interesting and inspiring. So yeah, you can use it as inspiration or as problem solving and that kind of thing. But it happens everywhere. It happens in recording, happens in mixing, and yeah, gain staging is a really integral thing to know about, and that is what the twin boost does. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you want a twin boost or a twin parallel, now's the time. Head on over to hamiltoneffects.com to check them out. Same goes for the Embers, and yeah, I would love it if you were to subscribe. I'm going to try and do regular videos like this once a week-ish, obviously depending on how much other work I've got on. But yeah, cool, thanks so much. Alright, see you soon.